start through. Hi, I'm so delighted to be joined today by Luke Holland. Luke is a 2009 Finance Walton Honors major, and he is working on Capitol Hill. So your first question might be, why would I choose Luke in my Where Are They Now series for marketing majors? But it's because,
failed.
no, it's because Luke's message that he has to bring about relationships, building alliances, trusting the people around you, figuring out who to trust. I think it's timeless and it covers every major. So when I thought of 6 students that I wanted to bring in front of you, I knew that I wanted Luke in this conversation. So thank you, Luke, for joining us today.
Molly, thank you so much for having me. I tell people all the time that you were by far my favorite professor in college. And had I had you my freshman year, I probably would have switched to a marketing major. But thank you so much for having me back. And it's an honor to talk to you guys there in class.
Thank
As
you.
odd as it is being virtual.
I know.
At this point.
I wish we could be in person, but we will make this convenient for you so that you're not having to repeat the information 4 times over in this COVID environment. But I really appreciate it. And Luke will jump right in. I found this brochure from our Walton Honors Program, and in it, it has your picture, but your job title is legislative assistant. And so you've had quite a career supporting in the United States Senate, guiding. Now you're setting strategic direction and tactical decisions. And so I'd love it if you'd share with our students exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Molly. So I failed to find a business job and had the joy, really the Lord opened up a lot of doors for me to work on Capitol Hill. I've always been interested in politics and was even when I was in college. And I graduated in 2009. I had planned to go work on Wall Street. I'm sure some of you have friends who are interested in doing that. And I was actually in New York City the week that Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy. So I imagine that most of you guys have seen The Big Short, that movie that kind of talks about the financial crisis. But I was literally living in it and saw really everything just kind of that I'd planned and worked toward crumble before my eyes, and which was tough. But I did well in school. I expected that I would have a job lined up by Thanksgiving of my senior year, that I'd be able to coast. And I didn't have a job offer, period, and didn't even have an interview between really Thanksgiving and in April of my senior year. So if you find yourself in a situation like that, don't worry. Just keep persevering, keep trying, and it'll all work out. It always does. And but I'd always been interested in politics, and so when Wall Street was obviously not going to happen, I started exploring options in Washington. And long story short, a week after I graduated, the senator, his office, who I work for now, his office called and offered me a job in the mailroom. And so it was very much entry-level job. And I thought, well, 2 years in Washington won't kill anybody. It's probably good political experience to get and can serve me while I wait for the economy to get better, and can then go work in the private sector. And so, like a lot of people, a lot of places, but it's definitely a story in Washington, you have a 2-year plan and then it turns into year 12. So I'm on year 12 of my 2-year plan, and I've had just about every job in the office since then. But I'm currently the senator's chief of staff and have the joy and privilege of being his principal political advisor while managing a team of about 30 people. And so we've got people who are focused on legislation, on press, on our operations. I'm actually in Oklahoma right now, but our operations in Oklahoma, and then also on the political side. And so I have the joy of being the leader of a team of teams, and really oversee everything in the senator's office, from recommending how he votes on things to what kind of communication strategy we want to pursue with the different issues of the day, to helping run and shape his reelection campaign, which is happening right now. But the most fun thing that I get to do is to think long-term about what his biggest goals are. Big picture, he's a pro at branding, and really lets us as his team kind of figure out what that means on a granular level. But thinking through what that brand means from a specific issues that we're going to work on, and then mobilizing and motivating our team to actually go and accomplish those things. So Molly, I don't know if that quite answers your question, but I think that kind of gives people a general idea of the kind of work that we do.
Perfect. Luke, thank you so much. We're living in these unprecedented times of a pandemic on a college campus. It's certainly changed things for my seniors. But, my first thought when we had this disruption hit was I thought back to that 2009, 2010 era. That will always be burned in my mind because I had so many amazing students that were impacted by it. You, Ben,
Yep.
Blake, Heather, Jamie. I mean, that was
All
just
of it.
a rock star group of
Yeah.
cohort that I watched sit and wait for jobs when
I
they should
mean,
have had jobs handed to them
yeah.
in the beginning.
One of the Ben Barr, he had a job offer from a bank in Washington and got engaged and to his now wife. They've been married for 11 years now. And I think a week after he got engaged, his job offer was rescinded. And so you guys can imagine being in their shoes of thinking that you're going to have a family to support. And you've got this job that you can do that with, and all of a sudden you got nothing.
Right.
So, but he's now doing great too. He's the CFO or something like that of an oil and gas company. So, it
That
was good.
whole cohort is just doing amazing work. And we'll speak to your good friend, Ben Rector here
Oh, good.
in a couple weeks. So we'll hear
Good.
about how he's navigated that music industry.
Gosh, you can't even do performances right now.
I
I guess
know.
he did a live stream, so that
Yes.
you'll have to ask him how it went. I actually wasn't able to watch. I bought a ticket, but I wasn't able to watch, and so I think I heard great things from my
Well,
friend.
buying the ticket is important.
Yeah, I know.
So I love this message because I think if you talk to faculty members, I just saw Dr. Pulu in the hallway and mentioned to him that I'd be speaking to you. People remember you and they knew you from that time. And we would have all guessed that you'd be the first hire out of the blocks. And so to have something completely out of your control come in, and then to see that when you pivoted, you didn't just take a job, you were willing to take a job that was so beneath your skill set because you understood the long-term picture. And I think it's such an important message for my students who are in the middle of their job search to hear.
I mean, I think that there's a lot of things that I would give you guys advice on with respect to a job hunt. But I think that if I were to just say one thing, that you want to find a place where you can grow.
Mm-hmm.
Money will follow, but money should be the least of your worries when it comes to your first job out of college. You have the rest of your life to make money. And if you're really good at what you do, and if you really enjoy what you're doing, then I think you're going to make plenty of money and you don't need to worry about it. But I think that it can be really easy to be attracted to the highest paying job right out of college.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just way more important to find a place and a team that you want to be like. And an organization, it's way better to start off in the mailroom of an organization that you want to be a part of, where they have a culture of growing and developing talent. I think that's the most important thing. Than it is to go do something where you're getting paid twice as much money, but you never have a shot at actually growing, let alone advancing. So I think finding a place where you fit in and fit into a team that wants to help you grow and develop as a professional, because as smart as you guys are and as much as you guys know, you really don't know anything yet, and you have a lot of time to figure. You will need a lot of time to figure things out in the private sector, and that's a good thing. But you just want to be around the right people who are mentoring you and helping you grow.
Right. It's just such a valuable lesson. I really appreciate your transparency and your willingness to share it. For me, to have known you 11 years ago, actually it's been longer because we got to work on your thesis together, and I had you in your, I believe, junior colloquium.
Yep.
To look back over those 11, 12 years and then see how you have so steadfastly and methodically carved out this career path and been patient. And then to look at you now, Chief of Staff in Washington, D.C., in the United States Senate, it brings me great joy. So I'm delighted to be here with you today. And let's jump into our topic, which is relationships, building alliances, and trust. And I really love how you integrate these concepts into your job, especially meaningful because you're a finance major, you're a numbers guy. That's what you always envision doing. And I think that relationships, alliance building, and trust is a seam that runs through every single job. So
Yeah.
I'd love for you to just talk.
It runs through every job, and it's really part of the foundation of marketing, right? And brand
Mhm.
building, where a brand has a relationship with its customers and with the public, and trust obviously is a big part of that, right? You think about the brand. Chipotle is a good example recently that
Mhm.
just came to mind, where they had a breach of trust, and their numbers started tanking and their stock price started tanking because people were concerned that they were going to get sick if they went and ate at Chipotle.
Right.
So it's taken them a long time to rebuild that trust. But I think that in Washington, everything is relational. One of the things that is frustrating about Washington, that is very appealing about the private sector, is that in the private sector, everybody speaks the same language. Everybody's trying to make more money, right? Like every business wants to be bigger and make more money and be more successful and blah, blah, blah. All great things. In politics, it's way more amorphous, like difficult to understand. People are trying to get more power and more influence. And so it's not quite as cut and dry. People are making an assessment of, is working with you going to help me either get what I want to get done, or is it going to help me in the long run with more power, whatever. And so it can be a little more difficult to make and challenging to make decisions about who to partner with and when and why.
Mhm.
But I think that in politics, it's more obvious maybe there in Washington than in other places that you can't get anything done by yourself. And I think that's the case whether you're just thinking about your own team, if you work at a company, or you are working in a role that is more collaborative across organizations, like we do in politics.
Mhm.
Uh, the only way that we can get anything done is if we build alliances. And so you think about bridges, right? One of my jobs as the senator's chief of staff is to build bridges, is to build relationships with people, to either reinforce the relationships he already has or to help him craft new relationships and build relationships on his behalf that are going to help accomplish his strategic objectives. And so you think about building a bridge, that takes a long time. Burning a bridge doesn't take very long at all, right? It's very easy to burn down a bridge, but then it's burnt down and everybody knows that you burnt down the bridge and nobody ever wants to work with you again. And so there are some people in Washington who are of the more kind of bridge burning ilk. And it's possible for someone who's willing to burn down bridges to get something done in the short run. But that may be the only thing that they ever get done, because they then build that reputation of being somebody who might stab you in the back or might burn a bridge or whatever. And I think it's also really short-sighted to think about people as friends and enemies. I mean, it's great to have friends. You should always try to have friendships with people. But I think I always want to be really slow to consider somebody my enemy, because frankly, they may be my best friend on another issue down the road.
Mhm.
This is especially true in politics, where we may be at odds or enemies in a sense on a particular issue. But if we have a good friendship and a good relationship, we may find things that we can work together on in the future and be the best of friends on. And I know the senator I work for, he used to work a lot with Barbara Boxer, and they're very different ideologically. Couldn't be more different. One, my senator is very conservative. Barbara Boxer is very liberal. And on environmental issues, they couldn't be more opposite. But they were also both responsible for transportation projects, and they got along fabulously on that. And they were able to cut some of the biggest deals in Washington, best deals that people had seen in a long time, and do things that other people thought weren't possible, because they had built a really good friendship and a good relationship. And even though they disagreed on things, it wasn't personal. It was all professional. They never took cheap shots at each other. They were always cordial and friendly and loving toward one another. And so that's a really important quality, I think, that applies. It's a soft skill, so to speak, but it applies across the board, any business environment, any nonprofit environment, any political environment. I think that will remain true and be the case in your personal experience. So but trust is almost always the foundation of those relationships. There, trust is the currency of Washington, D.C. And that may shock you when you see what's going on in the news, and it is shocking in a sense. But when you look behind the scenes and where people are actually working together, it's only possible insofar as somebody trusts the other person. And there's a lot of people who come through the doors of our office asking us to do different things. And one of the first things that I try to figure out to determine whether I can trust what they're saying or not is trying to figure out what their motive is. So if I can understand what somebody's motivation is behind what they're trying to do, then that helps me understand more broadly what it is that they're trying to accomplish. And if I understand what their motivation is, and I know what my motivation is, and they're aligned on this one particular issue, then I can work together with them. But the fastest way to lose my trust in the office is if you come in and I just can't figure out why you want me to do something. Everyone's coming in asking us to do something for them. It's fine. That's what we do, is we serve other people. But if I can't figure out why they want me to do something, then I can't really determine what their angle is, and I can't determine whether what they want me to do is actually in my best interest as well. And so one of the things, a story that I've told before, where that was kind of put on display for me early on in my career. I had just started working on aviation issues for my boss, and a lobbyist came in. He represented Delta Airlines, and he said, "Luke, I think your boss should sign on to this letter. It's about something in Japan, and it's not a big deal here in America, but it's a big deal to Delta." And so I said, "Okay, well, we'll happy to take a look at it." And he said, "But you should know that American Airlines does not like this letter." And I said, "Huh." And the lobbyist said, because I know that Tulsa has a huge American Airlines facility. We have like 6,000 employees in Tulsa. And so we're very sensitive to what their needs are, more so than Delta. And so he told me that you should really talk to American Airlines before you make a final decision on this. So this lobbyist, that was totally against his client's interest in one sense, but it's absolutely in his client's, in the short term, it's absolutely in his client's interest that his relationship with me be built on trust, and that I'm, consider him a friend and an ally of my long-term interest, which is to protect my boss. Mm-hmm. And so his forthrightness, I use this example all the time, as him being one of the best lobbyists I've ever worked with, because he prized our long-term relationship, and he prized my well-being over the short-term benefit, that because he probably could have pulled the wool over my eyes and gotten me to convince me to recommend that my boss sign on to this letter and make American Airlines mad. But if that would have happened, and then all of a sudden I'm getting yelled at because I got my boss to sign on to this letter and it's bad for American Airlines, then you better believe I'm never going to talk to that guy again. And so he's a very seasoned professional and a veteran of Washington, worked in the White House during the Bush administration, and so he's been around for a while. And so he knew what was really important, and that relationships are built on trust. And now he's one of my closest advisors. If somebody were to ask me if they wanted to hire a lobbyist, I don't know if I'm allowed to even recommend lobbyists to people, but if they were to do that and I were allowed to do it, then I would absolutely recommend him to them, because I know that he gets the bigger picture. And I think early on in our careers, it could be easy to not quite understand the value and the importance of relationships. And so I think it's just a really good thing for all of you guys to be thinking about as you get and start your careers, that relationships are everything, and it's really what makes the world go round. And that's a long-winded answer to your question, Mom.
It was a great answer. It's exactly what I wanted to hear, because I think, and maybe my students, they're probably very well more sophisticated than I was when I entered the workplace, but I assumed that everyone was working in the best interest of the company and the best interest of their coworkers. Right. And I can remember being taken aback the first time I realized that somebody had lied to me or somebody had a different agenda. And it's such a hard lesson. And I think on another level, my students are going to come out into a marketplace where they have 20 pieces of data sitting in front of them and 10 people behind that data, all tugging for their attention. And when you figure out who you can trust, it just makes life easier. You can narrow down your data analysis, you can narrow down who you talk to, and it just forms a foundation for the long term, like you said.
Absolutely.
Well, I know these aren't easy conversations, but I love it, Luke, also because in the midst of this chaos of politics, I think it's also good to hear from people that are behind the scenes working intentionally for the good of their constituents and not just the drama we see, on TV or on the West Wing or
I,
whatever show is.
I was with some family over the weekend, and they asked me what I hated most about my job, and they also asked me what I love most about it. So I got to talk about that. But one of the most frustrating things about my job is trying to battle against the narrative of the national press. I mean,
Mhm.
it takes up an enormous amount of my time to try to
And
think
energy.
and energy and heartache and headache.
Mhm.
But we can get into that another time. But
Yeah,
yeah, it can be frustrating to try to push through those conversations because it is so negative in the news, and that's what sells news, unfortunately. So
it
until
is.
we stop watching it, I guess
And so what is
it's
your
here to
favorite
stay.
thing?
So
What is your favorite thing if that's your
there's a
artist?
couple. So I'll go with what first came to mind because that's probably
Yes.
what's true. I love developing and building a team. I
Mhm.
love having people come into the office new and then being able to help them grow and reach their full potential. So that's the most fun part about being a leader, I think.
It's a great answer. I love
Yeah,
that. Well,
because you can kind of I love the work. I love being able to like do all the different things that we get to do. But this job won't last forever. I know that, and so I'm going to do something different at some point, Lord willing. And so I think that, but what I know that I can do anywhere, any job that I have is build other people up and help them grow, and I think that's a lot of fun.
this is perfect. So we'll have a guest speaker this semester, Jesse Lane, and he tells a great story about team building, some mistakes that he made and some things that he does really well now. So I love that this will reinforce. Do you have any closing thoughts for my awesome students or Walton in general?
Well, you should thank God every day you have Molly Rapert as your
Hmm.
teacher. She's the best professor at the University of Arkansas, and I don't mind saying that. I'm sure other people will find out. That's okay. They'll be okay. But Molly really does a phenomenal job, and I think that especially with you guys who are seniors. I assume a lot of
Yes.
you, not all of you, and a lot of you probably are hoping to have job offers if you don't already, and I hope you already do. But if you don't yet, or if the economy kind of gets shaken up a little bit over the next couple of months, and your plans have to change, be patient. Don't worry. Don't panic. And just kind of. My encouragement to all of you is to pursue what is most interesting to you and find a place where other people value that and want to help you grow, and then be patient. So I
Patient.
think that it's so easy when you're first coming out of college to have really high expectations about what you should be doing, and it's good to be ambitious and it's good to have those high expectations of yourself, but I think it's just really good to learn from people who have a lot of experience, and be patient with, if you do really well with the little bit of responsibility that you have, you want to be in a kind of team that values that and then starts giving you more and more responsibility over time. So that's my advice.
Well, I'm going to embarrass you by closing things out in saying that at the beginning of every semester, I go through this, seeing if I had it, a little bucket of, messages from students, and I rotate new ones on my board. So it's just a reminder of students going back 30 years and where they are and what they were struggling with at the time. And so I looked and I have your letter that you wrote me, and it says, "Thank you for believing in me." But it works both ways, Luke. I really appreciate that you've always been such a supporter of me and my students. And I think you believe in Walton. And I just really appreciate all that you do for this institution that I love so much and for me specifically.
Well, thanks for all the investment that you've given to me and to others, and for believing in me. I remember writing that note to you, and sometimes a one sentence letter is all you need to say. And
I treasured enough to have it up on my board. So thank
thank
you.
you. So,
Luke, I appreciate you taking time today and sharing your insights on relationships, alliances, and trust, and how career paths can ultimately work out. I'm awfully proud of you.
thank you, Molly. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks for having me.